Hello everybody and welcome to the Insomnia Running Club podcast. I am your host Mark Gallagher. You're very welcome to be here listening. This week I'm going to talk about all that I learned from my first attempt at a ultra event. So anybody who didn't listen or who hasn't checked out the previous podcast, just over 2 weeks ago, I decided to run a 0.1 stretch footpath at the front of my house for 24 hours to raise money for charity. It was one of the best experiences of my life. It has been the response during it, afterwards, the lessons that I've learned from it, and just events that have happened from it, all still within lockdown, have just been incredible. Absolutely amazing. Just one of the best experiences I've ever done. Last week as well, we talked to Brian Donnelly. He done an interview with us, and a lot of what he was saying sort of rubber stamped and confirmed the feelings that I was already getting from doing the 24-hour run. Now, the 24-hour run, I ran 81 miles. So 81 miles covered in the 24 hours, which as far as 24-hour events go, it's okay. But in my head, I wanted 100 miles. But I'm not downhearted. I'm not beating myself up about it, because this was off the cuff thing. The Friday before, I heard something on the radio about a guy doing a marathon in his driveway, which sparked the idea that I wanted to do something. This then happened pretty much 6 days notice. During lockdown, I gave myself to do this 24-hour challenge, and it was fantastic. I think if I had given myself more time, I would have talked myself out of it, or it wouldn't have been the success, or I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much as I did, because it was totally off the cuff. And it was just so random. It made it all the more fun. So pretty much the setup was 9 o'clock on Friday the 10th. I set off to run the 0.1 mile stretch of footpath. And the plan, really my race plan, was keep within a sort of 12-minute mile pace, heart rate below 140, and just see how we get on, and sort of whatever lessons learned. Because it was right outside my house, you needed a toilet break, if you needed food, if you needed a change of clothes, that was all there. It was all accessible. It was easy. So I wasn't panicked so much about the race day setup. Like, say if I was going to the 24-hour event, which was supposed to be held in June, now it's been postponed, then I would have been probably overcooking it and overthinking it, and sort of had too many backup plans and things, and all of that. I would have been probably stressing more about the event. But because this was at home, it was almost, the easiest way to do an ultra event, essentially. In that I had the safety net of the safest place in my world, which is my house. It was just there. My wife, my kids were there. I wasn't too far away from them. I had all the comforts of normal day life. It's just that I've chosen to stay outside for 24 hours and run. But what I learned from it, more to the running side of it, is that an ultra event, or a 24-hour event, because I can only speak firsthand from my experience, it is a 50-50 split between physical and mental. I was probably going into it very, very underprepared physically. I'd been trained up to 35 miles, long runs, and this was I was going to attempt double this in my head. The couple of weeks prior to it, with lockdown, I'll be honest with you, I was having a beer with my dinner, a glass of wine here, a glass of wine there, eating very rich, heavy, fatty foods. Not really the best 2 week run up or tapering phase. I was going on 10-mile runs every day, Legs were still recovering, I suppose, from me doing heavy training and sort of thinking to myself, I've still got plenty of time to go before and actually do an event. So I was going into this not in the best of shape, being totally honest with you. And not to totally discard that you have to be in super shape to do a 24-hour event, but I don't think you need to be as physically there as some people make out. You know, yes, if you're wanting to break records and go for 160 odd miles or whatever, yeah, you need to be in incredible shape, I would say. But for someone who's looking to run for 24 hours, to have a go and see what it's like, it's half of it's mental. Half of it very much so is a mental game, in that the way I went into this was, I went into it thinking it was going to be an education. So I went into it knowing, right, this is going to hurt at some stage. If this is going right, or if I'm doing it right, this is going to hurt at some point. It's inevitable. You know, I'm going to be running for 24 hours. I've only ran up to 35 miles, and I know my knees were starting to take a bit of a knocking. Then things were starting to get sore. So I knew the uncharted territory, the uncharted miles, there was going to be pain involved. But the incredible thing about the human body is it adapts. My running, I would say, from 9 o'clock in the evening until maybe 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning was the same sort of stride, same pace, same movement, same range of motion, very much so the same running style, the same running technique. After that, you know, niggles are starting to happen. Your body just adjusts. Your body just adjusts to another way to keep going forward. You know, it's not necessarily the same running stride. It just evolves. But the incredible thing is, I've never done it before, but yet your body knows what to do. Your body knows how to keep you moving forward, as long as you keep your head in it. As long as you keep your head there to say, yes, you're going to keep moving, we're not giving up, we're not going to stop. This is a 24-hour thing, you've committed to it, we're going to keep moving for 24 hours. That's pretty much it. You know, by the end of it, you know, yes, there was times I was just stumbling, walking, in pain. You know, my knee was barking at me towards the end of it, but you keep going, and then you sort of ride a wave of pain, and then your body goes, right, we can do a wee bit more here, we can run. All of a sudden you start running again. You know, you just hold in there for that little while longer. The pain will come, the pain will get intense at some points of it, and the pain, it's your body going, you know, you haven't been here before, let's stop here, you know, don't go any further. But once you tell your body, no, we're not stopping, it then goes, right, okay, we're not stopping, let's figure out a way to keep going. Okay, the stride you were doing there, to be honest, we can't keep up with that, so how about this, you know, using your hips. And this is all a subconscious thing. It's not as if you're going, right, I need to move my hips now in order to propel me forward. Your muscles that have been overworked, you know, so for example, my calves were spent, absolutely spent. There was no flick of the feet, you know, and forward propulsion coming from my calves. Towards the end, it was very much so a shuffle that started from my hips, and it was almost like a very straight leg running technique. But I didn't set out to do that. You know, looking back, I just did it. It just became a thing. But it's your mind sort of switched off the parts that weren't running right and the parts that didn't want to cooperate to start working and just to keep you going. You know, yes, I had to use a rolling pin and things like that on my legs at some point to try get rid of lactic acid, to try get myself going. But again, your body just adapts. Like, I mean, my head was just telling me to keep my legs elevated whenever I was resting. My body was saying, yes, let's do this. Let's endure a wee bit more pain with getting rid of the lactic acid. You know, I've never rehearsed these things. I've never done them. But your head just sort of comes up with these ways to keep you moving if you want to move forward. So what I've learned is both the human body is incredible, in that with very, very little race day preparation, you can just go and do it. Your head, as long as you have set it out to do 24 hours, then as long as you know that and you're not stopping, you're not giving yourself an out, you can go for 24 hours. If you go into it, this relates back as well to Brian Donnelly last week on the podcast. He confirmed it. People who run or don't run, non-runners, I say, I can't run the length of myself. It's just ignorant. You can run the length of yourself. It's not an excuse that you can't run the length of yourself. It's just that you have given yourself this thought that you can't do it. So yeah, you're right, you cannot do it because your head can't conceive that you can do it. But if your head can conceive that you can run for 24 hours, well, you can do it. Like I say, it'll just make changes to your body to keep you moving, to keep you going forward. If you put a ceiling on it that you can only run 3 mile, you can only run 3 mile. But I would say the same person, again, going back to last week, what Brian said, if you were to run 3 mile and you were to think, you know what, I'm going to run a marathon tomorrow, if you have it in your head that you would just keep going and you can run that marathon, whether it be pretty, not perfect technique, stop, starting, walking part of it, you can cover 26.2 miles. I'm telling you can just do it. Another incredible story that's come about in the past couple of weeks, this is maybe going a bit off topic, but a guy called David runs with us in the running club. Whenever it first started up, he was one of the first guys that came out running with us, and he said he wanted to run the Belfast Marathon. Been training. David ran with us up to 17 miles in his training runs. He then obviously lockdown happened. Belfast City Marathon's been postponed until September. But I think David was just there. He was just there. He had in his head that he could run a marathon. Now, he never told a sinner. He didn't even know until he went out that morning. He went out a morning to do his morning run. He said, you know what, I'm going to do a marathon. This is 3 weeks prior to when the Belfast City Marathon would have been. But totally accountable. He just went and did it. No one watching him. No official start line, no official finish line, just his GPS watch telling him when he's covered 26.2 miles. He made up the route as he went along. No medal, no pat in the back, totally accountable for every step he took, and he went and done 26.2 miles. If your head can think that you can do something, whether it be running a marathon, whether it be running an ultra marathon, whether it be being able to snatch 200 kilos or do a 300 kilo deadlift, if your mind can conceive that it can happen, your body and your actions and things will just open up to you for you to go and do them. I truly believe that, and I can first-hand experience now say that yes, if you truly believe in it, an outcome, and in your head you can actually see it happening, it's possible. It is totally possible. One of the other things I took from the run is all the time that it gives you. An ultra marathon is a bit of a gift, to be honest, in that it gives you all this time to yourself. Very little of it is actually spent with other people, but you've all this time to yourself to gather your thoughts and to think. I'm constantly thinking. I'm constantly trying to get things down on paper. If an idea comes into my head, I want to get it down on paper. Sometimes you get it down on paper and you don't have time in your day-to-day for it to sort of to grow a set of wings, really, and the expand on it and to go out there and almost figure things out. But you imagine I was out there for 24 hours. In that 24 hours, I thought a lot about the page and the podcast and the running club, and how much of an impact we can make from it. Like I say, we have definitely more passion than we do expertise when it comes to running. Hands down, I don't know really much about running other than just putting one leg in front of the other. But this is the incredible thing about ultra running, and this is why I think just do it. You know, give a gift to yourself and do an event. Is the time, well, two things. The time that you put in to training for such a thing is a gift. In that you have so much time on your training run. Sometimes you'll be out for 5, 6, 7 hours of exercise, of running. In that time, you know, Brian talked about it actually last week, and that about 5 years prior to him actually opening his restaurant, he had a about 20-mile conversation with someone he was running with about a noodle restaurant. And it was just a thought in his head, and he almost conjured the whole thing up subconsciously. 5 years later, it actually happened for him. But he had, you know, 20 odd miles to get a lot of thoughts out there and to bounce a lot of ideas off someone else and to get it out of his own head. You know, for me, the training part of it, you know, we train, we do long training runs. You know, there's generally me, Ivan, and David, who I mentioned. We will go out for long training runs. You'll talk about everything and anything. You know, your week, the week sort of default things that happen, and then ideas that come in your head, you can bounce them off people. You can almost gauge how crazy it is, and sometimes the crazier the idea, the more I want to go for it. But it is a gift to yourself, in that you have so much time in your own thoughts to actually figure them out, to make them into, or to figure out the next step into how you actually go about making them physical. And a lot of the time I was thinking about this page and I was going, you know, yes, we don't have much of a running experience or credentials, to be totally honest. Between us all, we haven't done many races, and I don't think the audience that we're putting this out to is for racers. I don't know if they're going to really get much from it, or if they're going to learn much from it. But this is more for people that are looking experiences, or people that have had enough of the sort of mundane every day and they want to maybe explore something different. And this is maybe a bit of a snippet or first-hand experience or ideas of like-minded people who have just went and done this off their own bat. Probably no real right to do so in the running world, but don't care, you know. I'm reading a book again. I'm going off on a complete tangent here, but listening to a book, The Iron War, and it was about the first Iron Man that ever got created. And this was a sport that came from nothing, but these were just a bunch of endurance junkies almost, you know, cyclists, swimmers, runners, and they had a competition to see who was the toughest. But over like the picking the sort of the marathons of each event, you know, so within swimming, 2.4 mile open water swim, you know, that'll test even the toughest of swimmers. 112 miles on a bike, you know, a sportive, you know, out there, that is a test for anyone. And then obviously the marathon for years has been considered the pinnacle of, you know, how far a human can run. But an Ironman links all these three things together. Now, there was never ever a complete triathlete on that. First triathlete was in its absolute infancy. You know, wasn't a sport, wasn't a thing, and then this was made. And this wasn't for your superstar cyclist who was just focused on cycling, or your superstar runner, or your superstar swimmer. This was just to find people's limits. And that's kind of what this podcast is. That's the journey I'm on. I just want to find limits and go past them, essentially. You know, there's no ceiling put on anything that I'm wanting to do. You know, yes, I'm training towards a 100-mile run, but that's just the next stepping stone for something bigger. I'm not saying I'm finishing the 100 miles, you know. I'm not even saying I'm finishing at an Ironman for triathlon. But hopefully that's who this podcast comes across to, you know, whether that be someone who, again, is into weightlifting, that's someone who's into tennis, that's someone who's into go-karting, whatever it may be. It's more for the people of that mindset of they're wanting to go further. and maybe they have the credentials, or maybe they don't. Maybe they just believe in themselves that they can go and do something that bit further. That's who I was thinking, we need to focus this podcast more towards those people, and broaden it out so that it's not just a running thing. Now, the running thing I'm very passionate about, and I do love it. And again, through the sport of ultra running, it puts you into those scenarios where you can push yourself to the limit. Whenever you start to tell people about running for 24 hours, like people that would have joined me or walking past on the run outside my house, they were saying, is this possible? Can you run? You're like, no, this has been going on for years. People have been doing 24-hour runs. And normal everyday people think that a marathon is the furthest that you can go running. But there's more. There's just more out there. And it's maybe speaking to those, say like David Goggins, he puts it, talking to the uncommon people, the uncommon amongst uncommon people. That's almost what you want to be, or that's what I want to be sort of pitching myself against. And I want to be part of that community, that uncommon community. And maybe that's who I want to speak to as well. And I don't think there's anybody in that uncommon mindset who really has it all figured out, or is the creme de la creme in a certain thing. I think there's a lot of people out there that have that same, they want to go further, but they don't know how to channel it, or they don't know how to actually do something. Again, it could be something totally unphysical. Again, last week we talked about Brian saying about people doing a qualification. Doing a degree is a life-changing experience. They'll put in 3, 4, 5, 6 years of education, of learning, to again get this stamped bit of paper that says, yep, Joe Bloggs now knows about that. Forever they will have that. In a way, a race is kind of the same thing, very, very much so, in that you put in the time. You've signed up for the race, so you've signed up for your university course, you've signed up for your race, very, very similar. You've done your 3, 4 years of learning, training your mind for your university course. You could be the same for running. For me now, I'm about 2.5 years into my education of endurance, and it's going great. I'm constantly learning, which is what I'm sharing with you today, some of my thoughts. But the learning being pain. Essentially, you're putting yourself through pain, and through the pain you're then learning. So at this moment in time, I have my Ironman certificate that I can put up there. I can put that on my CV that I've done that. I have my half Ironman, I have a marathon, I have my now I have my 24-hour run. I have that. That's a personal qualification. There's no board that sits and marks it, but I have it. I have it physically within me. I know I've put in the work, and I have done that. And pretty much anything after this now, it's just more education. It's the best kind of education, if you're to ask me, because you're learning about yourself, about what you're capable of, and again what it opens up to you. And again, going back to last week, just because Brian had so many good things to talk about, and it was just a lot of the stuff he says sort of clicks, and that you benefit from it. It's a gift to yourself to do it, and the lessons and the experience you take from it, you can keep with you for forever. But yeah, it's just, there's so many things from the experience that have just really blew my mind. Obviously what I've learned about myself, the physical side of it too. The physical side, what the lesson I've learned from the physicals, like I say, it's 50% mental, and the mental side of it is just training yourself probably to keep going, and to almost tell yourself, so pain's inevitable in an ultra race. Pain is inevitable, but how you train, I don't think you can train your body to not feel the pain. But what you can use it as is telling your body to, you can train your body and you can train your mind that when the pain comes, is to use it as fuel rather than to let it beat you. And that maybe sounds a bit cliche or a bit weird or a bit psycho, but whenever you're in that place, you're left with two options. You know, your body is barking at you. In my case, my knee, my right knee, was just, it felt like it was grinding. It felt like every step, it felt like my bones were just rubbing against my kneecap, and it was grinding. It just wasn't pleasant. But then it kept going, and then got a second wind, got a third wind. It didn't hurt for so many miles after that, and then it came back. So in a way, my head was almost able to go, well, ride the storm. There's going to be a bit of pain. If pain is the worst that your body can throw at you, you can deal with it. You've already dealt with it, you know. So you have a wee pity party and quit, and all of a sudden that's it, you're a quitter. Or you know from before that you just ride the storm, the pain will be there, and then it'll quit. You know, you get to the crest of the hill and you're gone. You're flying. I didn't have any hills. It was, you know, vanilla, smooth, flat. But I'm just putting an image out there. You know, you get to the top of something, or you get over a hump, and then it becomes fine. It becomes manageable after that. But I think in order, because my goal this year, whether Connemara 100 happens or not, at some point this year I will run 100 miles within a 30-hour time period, because that's what Connemara is. I will do it, whether it's again out my front door, whether it's in Connemara, whether I have to go to a forest park and do it, doesn't matter. I'm going to do it. I've set myself that goal, and that is happening this year. What I've taken again from that experience that I had 2 weeks ago at the front of my house is that I do need to build more muscle. I need to, so my mental muscle has grown. I need to build physical muscle. For that extra 19 miles, for me to cover that extra 19 miles, I need some extra muscle. I need core strength. I need leg strength. I need upper body strength, because let me tell you, my shoulders, my arms, my back, everything got a workout within 24 hours. You know, they weren't maybe stressed as much as my legs, but everything got a workout. So if I can improve my overall strength and my overall efficiency, my overall capacity for my muscles to deal with more, that can only be a good thing. And it's something I was completely neglecting in my training. I was all about mileage, which is not the right way. Now that I've gone over the other side of it and I've endured pain, there will be pain, don't get me wrong. Even if I am to do more of this, it will just make those periods of pain shorter. I'm convinced of it. Those periods of pain will be shorter, or they will be later on in the race, rather than them being at 60 mile where it began to be very, very tough, and it was the last 21 mile that it was constantly fighting pain. If I could put that off until 70, 80 miles and have them last 20 miles in pain, I can deal with that. You know, if that is the reason why I need to do squats, lunges, presses, core stability, if I need to do all that just to gain a 5, 10, 15, 20 mile advantage over the pain, that's what it needs to be. But I know now from going through it that's what it needs to be. And again, this is another thing, and in fact it's only just come into my head now. This experience, this was on a whim, very, very much so. It came into my head. I had been training for an event, but those events were months away yet. It happened a very, very similar thing whenever I was training for the Ironman. I was on my lunch one day, and I was on Facebook and work, and this guy came up on my Facebook page, a fellow called Declan Loy. And Declan, he is a business consultant, he's a speaker, does a lot for charity. He is a life coach as well, I think, possibly. But just a super switched on guy, just living life on his own terms. But this guy had decided he was going to do 32 half distance Ironman in 32 consecutive days in 32 counties of Ireland. And I saw this, and I was months away from doing those distances, but on a Wednesday I saw it. On the Saturday morning I went and done it, booked the day off work, I went and I did it, and I did it, I completed it. And in fairness, I completed it feeling a hell of a lot better than what I thought I was going to. This event was very, very much the same. Came up with it 5 days earlier and went and did it. I didn't give myself too much of an out. I didn't give myself too much to worry about at the beginning. It's almost as if an opportunity came and I just took it. And I think it pays massively, because now in my head, I am convinced. In my head, I am convinced that I can go and I can run 100 miles. Just from what I learned 2 weeks ago, I am convinced that in August, I will run 100 miles in Connemara. There is no two ways about it. I know I'm going to be in pain. I'm prepared for that. I know what I need to do in order to make that pain less. I know what I need to do in order, as far as strategy, as far as my rest, and as far as me being harder with myself. One of the things that I picked up on, especially, was after periods of rest in the 24-hour run, I was just too soft on myself and getting going, rather than picking my knees up and my heels up and driving at it for half a mile, not even a quarter of a mile, to get my legs pumping, the blood circulating and going. I found myself dragging my heels, walking, shuffling along for too long, for sometimes even a mile or two, and I was just putting myself into a downward spiral. What you need to do is, after the period of rest, get the blood pumping. It's gonna suck for the first wee while. It's sucky, it's no good, it's shite. But once the blood was pumping and once the blood was circulating, it was all good. There was a guy came and joined me, actually, and this is how I've learned this lesson. It was at about mile 60, and I'll be honest with you, I wasn't feeling great. I was really, really, in my head, I had, how on earth am I going to get to the 24 hours? Because my calves at this point had just locked up. There was I couldn't flex my ankle, because flexing my ankle would have shot pain up my shin, would have shot pain into my calves. It was unpleasant, and it wasn't nice taking a single step. So at that point, the rolling pin broke out, and my wife was rolling up and down my calves, trying to loosen up the muscle and to disperse the lactic acid. That did a great job. Maybe it was a placebo, I don't know. But in fairness, in my head, it done a great job. At that time, there was a guy turned up as well. I talked about him a couple of weeks ago in the post event podcast. A guy called Darren Miller. And Darren, just to reinstate it again, Darren is that guy. If you're on Strava, you will have someone who's king of the hill on every segment, whether it be running, on a bike, whatever. Darren is that guy. Any segment that is around where I live, Darren is king of the hill. And I've never met him before, but I recognised his name from Strava. So he said, I'm Darren, I'm just here to run a couple of miles with you. Obviously social distancing and all that there. And he said, look, we'll take it easy, we'll go at your pace. And me being scundered to run at a 12 mile, 13 mile pace, which is what it was going to happen, we ran at 9-minute miles. And it was the best thing to happen, because it shocked my system. It got my legs pumping with blood. It got things loosened up. It got my body going. Because rather than dragging my heels and saying to him, Darren, look, I'm going to have to shuffle along here, I just went with it. And for maybe 3 miles, we done that at 9-minute miles. Then I dropped back to 10, 11, 12, but was able to keep going at that. was the case. And yeah, so definitely being too much of a pansy on myself whenever I was just being soft with myself whenever I had to get going forward. Connemara, whenever it happens, after any period of rest, there'll just be a blast just to get the legs going and get myself moving and out there. So yeah, I've learned so much physically, mentally, and not only that, it was just like I said at the very, very beginning, it was just an amazing experience. It was just amazing. I have a cracking story to tell now. I'll be able to tell it forever. I'll be able to bore, hopefully in the future, my grandkids with it, and whoever will listen to me, I will bore you to tears with my homemade 24-hour ultra at the front of my house. But I've done it. I have now the right to talk about it all that I want, but I can now talk about it, is the thing. And anybody who's on the fence about going for something, or they don't feel they've got the credentials, or they don't feel that they're there yet, but yet they know inside them that they can do it, go and do it. If it's in your gut that you can go and do it, the David from the running clubs out there, the Brian Donnellys, me, Ivan, my running partner, there's so many, but that's only people I know, and they can go and they can just do these things at the drop of a hat. Once the mood takes them, just go and do it. Just go and do it. Don't let anybody hold you back. You don't even need to tell anyone. Just go and do it. But just put yourself out there and have an experience. Have an experience like it, because it is life changing. It is amazing. And it opens your mind up to just new possibilities and to new thoughts, and to new ceilings, new barriers, no ceilings, it's just endless. It's endless what you can do, and that's my frame of mind at the minute. Just trying to get things on paper and just trying to get things manifested into real world physical things. Like I know I talked to you about what we want to do with the club, and I think with the podcast and things, definitely maybe pitching to a very, very, very small niche with the running aspect. And again, don't get me wrong, I love running, but I think this message that we're trying to get out there, it is bigger than just running. It can go into any aspect. It's just almost challenge. It's the challenge lifestyle. People that want to go out there and challenge themselves and reach big things. That's who I want to address, and that's who I want to be out there talking to and mingling with and dealing with. There's more interviews that I want to do. Last week speaking to Brian. I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't listened to it, please listen to it. Such a cool guy, such a great story to tell. And what I find amazing about Brian's story is how he can take a particular mindset or a particular way of things and bring it into the real world, into business, or not even the real business world. The business world, he brought his mindset into that, and he's made big change, and he's doing things on his own terms as far as his life goes. So yeah, that's one of the big things with the podcast. Maybe I want to change is to broaden it out there, not even just to people who run, but to business people, to other athletes who are doing massive, incredible things, people who are just out there doing incredible things. I think inspiring stories more so than just running. Now the running plays a big part in it, but I think the inspiring stories, getting people fired up about something, that's definitely, I know I feed off it, and if I feed off it, there's bound to be other people out there that does the same. So that's what I want to bring forward. I think that challenge mentality, that endurance mentality, that achievement mentality, that suffer pain, but on the other side of it, there's amazing things that can come of it, and lessons to be learned. That's more what I want to explore with this podcast, and hopefully you're getting a taste of that. Hopefully me rambling on for the past wee while hasn't been too distracted, or it's made sense. But that's where I want to go with it, and that's the type of people who I want to talk to and I want to help, and I want to get involved with. And I want those people to help me too, because any wee nugget of something that I can get that pushes me on to the next challenge or the next feat or the next level, you know, that's where that's the type of people I want to seek out and I want to be with. So listen, I really hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I hope it makes you go out there and attack the week and get fired up and to do whatever you're wanting to do. If you're on the fence about something, to sign up for it, to do it, to take it upon yourself and just go out there and make a change and make big things happen. So listen, thank you very much for listening to me. I'll catch you throughout the week, and yes, all the best. Good luck. Bye.